Well, hey, I just wanted to start off today by giving a little bit of context, what we've been going through. We're taking a journey through the church's fifth priority, which came out of our Vision Week, and that is to provide good, humanizing housing for those in need within our community. Would you guys mind starting with me in prayer? God, we thank you for today. We thank you for the fact that we have the ability to learn, to connect, to heal, to get back to shalom, to wholeness. We pray, God, that as we study what it is that you've given us as this task to create home for people, that you would touch our hearts, help that to touch our families, our communities, and spread onto the world. We thank you for all of this in your name. Amen. Amen. Woo. All right, so to support the fifth priority, we're going through the 8 marks of home. Last week, we went through the first 4. And they come from a book called Beyond Homelessness. And if you all want to dig into it, I would suggest you do that. It goes into depth of study of different studies that they've done on individuals. They looked at different communities. They've also looked at the Bible. There's a lot of biblical references in there. So it's really encouraging for those of us that are doing this work and are in it. Last week, we went through the first 4. And if you weren't able to catch those, go ahead and take a look at the video. It might give you a little bit of context as we move forward, but I want to recap those real quick. The first one is a home is a place of permanence. Second is a home is a place of dwelling. Third is a home is a storied place. And fourth is a home is a safe resting place. Today we're going to dive into the 5th one. And the 5th mark of a home is it's a place of hospitality. The book Beyond Homelessness says that if homes are to resist the temptation to become self-enclosed fortresses, if homes are to have windows and doors that are open, they must be sites of hospitality. In a fortress, if our goal is to create a house that's a fortress, we've got high walls, we've got thick walls, they're tightly secure, everyone is a stranger, there's no room for visitors. But in a hospitable home, by contrast, the boundaries are low boundaries. Thin and loose boundaries. Fewer strangers, there's always room for others. Similar to this place, yeah? A home is a place for open-handed hospitality. They mentioned that Dorothy Day argued that property was an extension of the body of a human being. If you think about that, I've had to really contemplate how we do things around here, and even in my own house, what that's like. Monnier noticed that by using property or space in a protective and defensive manner, one becomes unavailable to the outside world. The property insulates and isolates them. Rosemary Houghton emphasized that hospitality means letting go of certainty and control. Anybody excited about letting go of certainty and control? Yeah, me neither. In other words, hospitality is what constitutes a home as a home, yet it keeps the doors open, keeps the boundaries, but adds welcome and protection, and avoids that tendency that we have to exclude. It's about inclusion over exclusion. It's about welcome in versus stay out. But it also requires boundaries. So it's this complex dance that we have to have. It's boundaries and welcoming in. It's protection without exclusion. All of us, we need to have safety and boundaries, but we still need to be able to work on our hospitality. How do we do that here? I was thinking about how we do it in our ministries here and in FPK and HGG, all those letters. That's First Pres Kids, not a rap group, but it would be cool, right? Like FPK. Have you guys seen them in concert? HGG stands for His Growing Grove. That's our daycare here on site. One of the things I think about is story time. Although it's very protected, right? Not just anybody can walk in, but they've welcomed us as staff to go in and read to the children. How cool is that, right? To be able to go and read a story to some kids. It's hospitable. It's getting to hear a lesson. It's learning how to read. It's witnessing reading from others. So call them. Don't just walk in, please. Just call them first. Set up an appointment. Students of Eden, allowing that space for young people to go somewhere where people are excited to see them. They get to do fun stuff, minus the exclusive cliques that they find elsewhere. I know when I was in middle school ministry, it's everybody thought everybody else was weird. And the answer was, you're all weird, okay? You're middle schoolers, everybody's weird, you all smell funny, just get over it. But there's a way for us to create that inclusivity, and we just break through it and we connect with each other. We have that hospitality. In community life, I mean, I keep going back to community groups. I think community groups actually create home here. We have affinity groups where we link together based on different phases of life, right? You find somebody in a similar phase of life and we're working through things together. I know some of the toughest things I've been through over the last 7 years, I went through with my community group at my old church, and now I'm going through them with my new community group here. Sunday mornings, translation, multiple languages, language access, learning about indigenous practices. Our meet and greet. I mean, how about that, right? That hospitality. The way Mr. Dahlstead waves at the camera every single week. You know what I mean? He wants to make sure everybody on Zoom feels included, right? That's hospitality. In our community life, community outreach, allowing everyone into the shelters. And that's everyone. Unless they're currently a safety risk to other people, because we got to go back to that fourth mark of home, right? Which is a safe resting place. But allowing people to have their own space, making sure that people have a little barrier of space, a little bit of their own. It allows the opportunity to be safe and settled so that hospitality can develop. You know, one of the things that happens quite a bit is we see folks in our shelter start to jump in and do some chores, right? We see people helping out with the mats. We see people helping out with breakfast, with lunch, with dinner, cleaning up. I mean, I rolled up here today and I saw somebody walking around the property picking up trash. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. Nobody asked them to do it, right? It's this sense of hospitality that once you have space, you have boundaries, it's natural, it's created when you have your own space. Then the sixth mark of home is one that's really kind of tough to grab, so I want to spend a little time on that. Number 6 is a place of embodied inhabitation. A distinction between a temporary occupant and a permanent inhabitant. So occupant and inhabitant. Between merely living in a place and becoming rooted in a particular place. David Orr describes this important distinction between residing and dwelling. The resident is a temporary and rootless occupant who mostly needs to know where the banks and stores are in order to plug in. But the inhabitant in the particular habitat cannot be separated without doing violence to both. Separating an inhabitant and the habitat creates violence. We learned that in the video. To reside is to live as a transient and as a stranger to one's place, and inevitably to part of oneself. The inhabitant and place mutually shape each other. It's this dance again. A resident is a temporary occupant, putting down few roots and investing little, and perhaps even caring little. But the inhabitant dwells in an intimate, organic, and mutually nurturing relationship with the place. Good inhabitants is an art requiring detailed knowledge of a place, the capacity for observation, a sense of care and rootedness. For me, while my kids went to school, my oldest, she started in kindergarten, and we moved out of town. And we lived out of town until my youngest graduated high school, which was this past June. We just moved back to Hayward in July. And I'll tell you, I feel like an inhabitant in the city of Hayward because I'm back home. It's wild. I was standing out front of my house. I was having a phone call one day, and I couldn't go inside because my kids were in there. They were all, doing kid stuff. And I'm on the phone. I'm trying to have this serious conversation, and a car drives up real slow and slows down in front of my house. And I'm from out there, so I'm a little nervous. And he's just staring at me. And I look over, and it's one of my best friends on the planet. He didn't know where I had lived yet, and he just happened to be driving by, stops, and is waiting for me to finish my phone call while he's in the middle of the street, right? It's that place that's connected to the human, right? And then, the backyard, I've been learning from Dan Johansson how to put down cardboard, and then you put wood chips on top of that, right? I mean, see? Beverly knows, she's nodding. We got all kinds of wood chips out here. I got some of the extras. There was extra, I got some. But, making that space feel like me and my family. Home requires care and cultivation. But the care and cultivation is always located in a particular place. And habitation is a two-way street. We not only shape a place according to our own homemaking ways, but we're shaped by the place that we inhabit. Kimberly W. says, we don't only give a sense of identity to the place we call home, but we also draw our identity from that place. Let's take a look at home of a friend of mine. You guys see these beautiful flowers? This was one of the biggest brain pop for me that I've ever had in my life. This actually, I went down into this place. This is located in the homeless encampment in Livermore. I was doing homeless outreach, and I went down into the creek. This is in the creek that comes all the way from the Sierras all the way out to the bay, goes through Livermore, goes under the freeway. And this is a pretty rough spot. In this spot, when we had the rains just a few years back and we had the flooding, the water rose about 15 feet here and everybody was wiped out. But if you notice, that first one, there was beautiful, thriving flowers. This is after that flood. If you notice, the ground is clean and swept. They sweep the dirt there. They took sticks and made a snake rail fence. There's a Home Depot in that parking lot. They took all of these plants that you see from the garbage of the Home Depot because they were thrown away because they were withered, and they brought them back to life. And they planted them in the dirt. If you notice, there's shapes, there's little flower pots, there's, you can see all of these different shapes that they put together. They put together their little gardens. They've got stones that they went and handpicked and laid them out. And if we can go to that last one, this is Karen. And Karen embodies this space, and this space embodies her. If you notice, those are logs. They chopped down those logs, and they dug out the logs. I went over there, and they were using a hatchet for weeks, digging out the logs so that they could plant those plants inside the logs. And she's standing there, and I got her to stand still just long enough to take that picture. She didn't ever stand still. But Karen works about 60 to 80 hours a week in that creek, making it her space. That's embodied in habitation. I mean, can you guys see all of the life behind her, all of the flowers growing? I mean, all of the different fences, and that's not just her. This is everyone down there was taking their time to build a space that represented them. This is home. And when it came time for Goodness Village to open up, she was actually at the top of the list. Not just from the nonprofit I worked with, but actually the police department wanted to make her their top recommendation. And they went down and they went through the application process, and then when it got time for her to leave this space, she chose to stay there. Because that space represented her, and she represents that space. It's a hard one for those of us that have a door that locks, right? For those of us that have these types of flowers in a residence with an address to understand that. But if you knew Karen, you'd get it. The people that know her personally weren't disappointed in that. They understood it. I also think that when we think about how this happens here, embodied habitation happens here, I want to dive into 2 Corinthians 5, 7 through 8 real quick. It says, "For we live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord." Now that word home is endemeo. It's a Greek word, and it means to be among one's own people, to dwell in one's own country, to stay at home. We find home in the Lord. More so than just a place, more so than just a house, we find home in the Lord. How do we do that here with our children? The playgrounds, activities, and spaces that are designed to allow kids to be kids, to do kid stuff without judgment, and to be shaped by that space as well. I don't know if anybody ever has done childcare here, but a space can be real empty and kids come in and they just fill up the space with energy, right? Yep, energy. That's what we'll call it. Students of Eden, the design of that room and the play space that mirrors their needs. I mean, I don't know if you guys have all been in there. I would encourage you set up a time with Andy to go check it out. But like, they've got these hammocks that you can sit in and like swing around. That's really good for me, somebody with ADD. I just need to move all the time. I just can't stop. Sorry. But there's also like a little nook if you just want to be alone, but you're still in the room with other people. I don't know if anybody's an introvert. You feel that? Like, that's the thing. Hey, we need those things. There's also video games for people who need to disconnect sometimes. There's also times where they go outside, the way they play outside. They're just being them. How we do that in community life, we've got classes, we've got events, we've got groups, we got this holiday market coming up, right? It's a way for us to all build community here, for us to get together on a regular basis, support each other, and be with each other. Sunday mornings, how about this newly remodeled space? It's a beautiful room. It's got comfortable chairs. And if you wanted to take a chair and slide it over there in the corner, you could do it. If you wanted to sit at the bar on the side, you could do that, right? There's a way for you to stand. There's a way for you to sit. There's a way for you to be comfortable, right? This newly remodeled space is for us. In community outreach, we're constantly searching for activities, services, and programming that meet the needs of our guests. We most recently just had a therapist hired, and we're so excited about this therapist. She's got a lot of experience in Hayward, from Hayward, been doing a lot of activism work in Hayward for many decades. I've run into her several different times in other different worlds I've worked in. And she started about 3-4 weeks ago setting up circles just to hang out with the guests at South Hayward Parish in our shelter, right? We do that here. We've got our very own Mary Triplet who comes out weekly to sit in our groups and help us and support us and be there for folks. We have a group, but they also have a therapist available here. How cool is that? How cool is that? Our emergency rental assistance program, it just finished up last month, fam. Over $9 million through South Hayward Parish, through Sandrea Mabry and her team, we're able to give $9 million to people to stay in their homes. Come on. The food pantry, that work there, the tiny homes here, tiny homes we're looking to develop at South Hayward Parish, the redevelopment of this property, those staff with specialized training, allowing people to have dignity and creation space. I feel like this one here is kind of like where vocation comes in. We're kind of like work and us working out of our gifting and also being developed and finding identity in our contribution to the world. We got to be careful because that's not our only value, but I think this is kind of where that comes in. Number 7, if we can move forward, is a place of orientation. Think about like being homesick. Think of children away from home for summer camp, or maybe if you've ever traveled for a long time and you just like, man, I just can't wait to get home. Sometimes we can get an upset stomach, a loss of appetite, insomnia, disorientation. We feel emotionally out of sorts and out of kilter. We get lost. We get turned around or mixed up more quickly and easily. We can get disoriented when we're not home. We don't have that regular touch back at home. One of the things we got to think of when we're away from home is like, when does the mail get here? Where do I get a car repaired? Where do I go for coffee? It would have been the other order for me. Probably the coffee first and then the others. How do I connect with others? Where's the Wi-Fi? Does anybody know the Wi-Fi password? I need the Wi-Fi password. Where's the % symbol? Does it go the beginning or the end? I did one yesterday. I was at a Rumi Cafe, and it was the longest password I think I've ever entered, ever. I will never be able to guess that one again. Because home functions as a point of orientation around which our world is rendered meaningful, we no longer feel at home when we do not have a place to orient each day. It's a place that we get back to center. It provides order and direction to our lives. As Eliade puts it, it's an axis mundi, which is the axis of our world, where everything comes together, the point of orientation that makes everything else make sense. Dovey also describes it as, we are oriented with a spatial, temporal, and social cultural order that we understand. Home is the center of our spatial world. To have roots in a place, to have a secure point from which to look out on the world, a firm grasp of one's own position in the order of things, and a significant spiritual and psychological attachment to somewhere, someplace in specific. He says, Weil, which is a French mystic, says, to be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. Say that again. To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. And it's super difficult to define. We all have roots by virtue of our real, active, and natural participation in life as a community. As we're living, we shape certain particular treasures of the past and certain particular expectations of the future. Home is a rooted place from which we can orient ourselves, get our bearings, find our direction, and then get up and do it again tomorrow. It provides an anchor that prevents us from being set adrift. How do we do that for the kids here at First Pres? Providing consistency for our little ones, comforting them. You know, Mike mentioned Glenna earlier. She's been working here. Does anybody know how long she's been working here? Everybody's like, I don't even know. What's beyond a lot? But how many children has she been able to comfort and provide consistency for in this space? And she's a rock. And some of those children come back to see her. Her and other teachers have meant something. You know, we, like I was saying before, we have staff here that went to HGG when they were infants. You know, students of Eden, they describe this as a safe place. It's not easy to do for middle schoolers and high schoolers. But for them to have safety and for them to actually feel like they're connected, they can come, they can root here once a week, twice a week, and then go back out and do the things in the week that they need to do that are outside of home. I'll tell you, for me in community life, you know, that group that we have, we call them the bread breakers. That's our community group. We get together, we break bread, we hang out, we kind of leave everything on the table because we know enough about each other. We can start from where we left off. We don't have to start from scratch and say my name. You know, we could just jump right in. Remember what I told you about David? David did it again. I'm not the only one. But you get to leave those things there and you get to reorient. And then we get to pray together, right? We get to lift each other up. You know, one of the physical spaces here is the courtyard in community outreach. It's an outdoor space, but it's indoor. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an outdoor space where you can get sun, you can get vitamin D, but then you're not bothered by the community, or you're not being seen as a bother. You're just being. Most of us have a backyard. Our folks without a house do not. So this courtyard becomes that. It becomes a place for people to just be without being bothered or being a bother. The library books that people get to read here, I don't know if you guys know, but the Alameda County Library has us as a remote location. We're a branch of the Alameda County Library. We've got laptops here. We've got books. They constantly are circulating the different books. A comfortable place to lie down. The garden at SHP. A rose garden here. Regular and consistent behavior and expectations from staff. Just the way that we treat each other can actually do that for people, a way to orient. Because if you know how you're going to be treated all the time and it's consistent, you can settle down. But if people are constantly changing the rules on you, how can you feel comfortable? Home is where we get back to our ground zero. It's where we recover from all the things we endured in the day. It's a place where we know we can be in the eye of the storm no matter what went on outside of the home. I'll tell you, like, for me, I've been through some pretty tough things. And sometimes I get to this point, it's like the end of the rope. And all I can remind myself is, God loves me, my family loves me. There's been times where I call my wife, I'll walk in the house, I'll call her one of the other ways, and I'll just say, just tell me you love me. That's all I need right now. Nothing else really. I'm putting so much importance on something that I can't control. I just need to come back home. I just need to sit down. I need to shut the door. I just need to get back to myself. Please call the children, tell them to call me and tell me that they love me. I need that right now. That's home. In John 15, verse 4 through 14, We hear, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you're like a branch that's thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. I felt like that some days. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask what you wish, and it'll be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father is loved, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you can do what I command. It's this thought of remaining in God, being at home in God, and then sharing that with others. That's the fruit. If we remain on the vine, we can bear that fruit. The eighth mark of home, the last one. Home is a place of affiliation and belonging. Think of the words home team, hometown, homeland. Home is where we find our place and gain our identity. Not only just a point of orientation, but it's a locus of recognition and acceptance. Jürgen Moltmann puts it this way: I am at home where people know me and where I find recognition without having to struggle for it. I'm seeing some nods. Everybody's thinking about those spaces, right? That place where you walk in and people are like, hey, I know you. We long for the familiar and familial bonds of affection derived from membership in our clan or our group. Even when those bonds of affection are strained or absent, we nonetheless find ourselves returning to that place where we know we'll find refuge. Home is where you're taken in, not just tolerated. Even if neither you nor your family find the prospect pleasant, it's a place where you're taken in regardless. Home is a place where you feel you belong, and which in some sense belongs to you. The belonging goes both ways. It's a place where everybody knows your name. I wasn't the only one thinking that, right? Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Anybody want to sing it real quick? Can we do a break? No? Okay. I got the thumbs down. I won't do it. It's a place where you're happily greeted. It's that feeling you get during the meet and greet here when you're sitting down and somebody walks up to you. They saw you. A place where you're seen, known, and heard. It's a place where you actually feel wanted. If you think about that, it's the thing, we do that for our children, right? I don't know if you guys have ever watched the drop-off in the mornings. It's a mixed bag, okay? I get the reports from our safety team. They're like, we're having 3 meltdowns this morning, right? Because nobody wants to leave mama or dada, right? But to be welcomed in, it typically only lasts about 12 seconds. Because there's that feeling of loss and there's the feeling of welcome. You made it home. You're home here for the next 8 hours, right? How do we do it for students of Eden? I'll tell you, Wednesday nights, I know it's Wednesday nights because I always have this panic moment because it sounds like there's elephants running down the hallway. And I'm like, what happened? I get ready to jump up and grab my radio, and I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday. Just calm down. It's fine. Nothing's happened. Community life. I mean, the fact that, we get to go to each other's houses, take our shoes off, relax. We can hang out. I think Phil Arzino tells me he hangs out once a quarter with guys he's known since kindergarten, right? Come on, family, that's home. That's home. Sunday mornings, our name tags, after a while, we will get to know each other. I promise. Just keep saying it over and over again. We'll get to know each other's names and recognize And then eventually we'll have to get to re-know each other when we don't have masks anymore, right? Everybody agrees, huh? Everybody says amen on that one. I'm in community outreach. It's one of the ways when people sign in, we have a picture taken, and it's on our ID so that we start to recognize people, right? So we can call people by their name and ask people what they want to be called. We actually don't have a preference of what people are called. We call them what they ask us to call them. And we just consistently do that. And all are welcomed. You know, I think of Alma, who's our shelter manager, and she always says, "Hello, my friend," no matter how bad the day is going. I don't know if some people have met her. Someone could be having a full-on meltdown. I mean, full-on meltdown. And she goes, "Hello, my friend." It's always the same greeting. It's that consistent, it's welcoming, it's a place where you feel like you're welcomed. And when we're away from that, we feel homesick. To be on the inside of this home necessarily entails that others are on the outside of the home, and those who do not belong at all or in the same way. In short, home is a place of belonging, of recognition and acceptance, rather than disdain or rejection. At home, we feel included, we belong, and we have friends, and we are friends, we have family, and we are family. When we're not at home, we feel like outcasts. We can feel dysfunctional when we're outside of our home. And I will say, for a lot of folks who you might see on the street, there may not be a drug involved. There may not be a mental health issue involved. There may just be a lack of home. I'll tell you that that's one of the wild things that hit me and that I've begun to learn as I get close up and continue to do this work is that sometimes people just need a hug. Sometimes people just need a regular place where they're going to be accepted. A lot of times people have felt like, oh, they don't want that. And I disagree every single time somebody says that, because there's times where people will present that they don't want something, but in reality, they don't believe that they deserve it. They don't believe that it's for them. They believe it's for somebody else. And I'm here to tell you, church, that you deserve it, that it's for you, and God creates home for you. God has designed this place that has all of the 8 marks of home, on earth as it is in heaven. In Isaiah chapter 32, we read, God tells us this: "My people will live in peaceful dwelling places, in secure homes, in undisturbed places of rest. Though hail flattens the forest and the city is leveled completely, how blessed you will be, sowing your seed by every stream and letting your cattle and donkeys range free." God's created that space for you, created the space for me. We're not at home in the physical body alone, but in our bodies and in God's self. And when we remain in God, we are truly at home. This centered space at home with God allows us to share and show others the way home, to their original and true created selves, made in the image of God. I said it before, and I'll say it every single week on Sunday as we go to Stack Life, that everyone is exactly who God had in mind when God created them. God makes these 8 things available to you. God makes a place of permanence for you, a place of dwelling for you, a storied place, a safe resting place, a place of hospitality, a place of embodied inhabitation, a place of orientation, and a place of affiliation and belonging. You know, this last week was really difficult, if I'm really honest with y'all. I just need to take a second and just sit in gratitude for those who have chosen to do this. To you, church. No matter how tough it was, I'm grateful for the people who dedicated so much of themselves to being in community with those in deep need. It's not easy. It's not always fun. I'm appreciative for you, the people who decided to love when it's hard. The people who would be willing to lose a job, a friend, or break a relationship over standing up for what is good, what is right, and what is just. Those of you that serve and give from your first fruits. I feel at home here, fam. I really do. The beautiful thing is I'm not the only one. One thing my dad always says is, and he said it to me yesterday, God uses our arms to hug each other. So hug each other in the name of Jesus. I feel at home here at First Pres with the hugs of those who were called and answered that call to do this hard work of making home for those that don't have it. I love and appreciate every single one of you all. I want to thank you all for loving well. Dear God, we just thank you so much for this home that you've created for us in you. I pray, God, that we would recognize all of the elements that you've created in our own lives that make it to where we have and deserve and are enough to be at home with you. Pray, God, that we would remain in you and you would remain in us so we could bear that fruit, which is to create home for others. In your name, amen.